When Kevin Holland stormed out of UFC 316 Media Day after being asked one simple question, it exposed a bitter rivalry that has the entire MMA world talking. What started as a harmless joke has spiraled into one of the most disrespectful feuds in recent memory, with legends turning against Holland and his career hanging by a thread. The question that set Holland off was innocent enough. A reporter simply asked about his relationship with Quinton Jackson. Holland's response was anything but professional. My current relationship
My
with
current
Rampage
relationship with
Jackson?
Rampage Jackson? Bro,
Bro,
Rampage Jackson's not in the
not
UFC, is
currently
he?
in the UFC, is he?
No.
Then
Get
get
off
off
his
his
dick. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm out of here, guys.
Have
Have a good day. And just like that, Holland walked away from the media scrum. But the drama didn't end there. Before storming out, Holland dropped a bombshell accusation that revealed just how deep this feud runs. He claimed that Rampage's podcast still owes him thousands of dollars for his appearance earlier this year.
And speaking of that, they still owe me a couple grand, and they always do a bad job of paying me on the first of the month. They always pay like around like the 10th or something like that. I don't know if they're having a money problem, but they need to do a better job paying me on time.
This wasn't just about respect anymore. Holland was publicly calling out a UFC legend over money. The incident that Holland referenced goes back to January 2025, when he appeared on Rampage Jackson's Jackson podcast just days before his fight against Rainier de Ritter. What was supposed to be a routine promotional interview turned into one of the most uncomfortable podcast episodes in MMA history. From the moment Holland walked through the door, witnesses say he brought negative energy that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Behind-the-scenes footage later revealed just how cold things were from the start. When Rampage approached Holland for what should have been a friendly greeting, offering his typical bro hug, Holland completely shut him down. "How you doing, buddy?" Rampage asked cheerfully, only to be met with Holland's dismissive handshake and standoffish body language. "Oh, you gonna do me like that? Okay. You're still mad at me, bro. Okay. All right. It's all good. I respect it," Rampage responded, clearly sensing the tension. Even the podcast co-host could feel what was coming, muttering, "It's going to be a long podcast, huh?" The roots of this bitter feud trace back to something that should have been completely forgotten, a social media joke that Holland took way too personally. During the UFC 299 ceremonial weigh-ins, Holland faced off against Michael "Venom" Page in what should have been a standard pre-fight stare-down. But Page, staying true to his snake-like persona, raised his hand in his signature gesture. Holland, in what many saw as a show of respect or gamesmanship, reached up and grabbed Page's hand, creating an unusual moment that caught everyone's attention. Rampage Jackson, known throughout his career for his crude sense of humor, saw this interaction and couldn't resist making a joke on Instagram. He compared the hand-linking gesture between Holland and Page to two women scissoring. For most people, this would have been a throwaway comment from a retired fighter known for pushing boundaries. But Holland took it as a personal attack, and that resentment festered for months until their podcast encounter. When the cameras started rolling on the Jackson podcast, the tension that had been building exploded into view. Holland, still carrying anger from that Instagram comment, decided to challenge Rampage Jackson to an actual fight. Keep in mind, this is a 32-year-old welterweight, calling out a 46-year-old former light heavyweight champion who outweighs him by at least 50 pounds.
Last thing he want to do is fight me, though. That's the last thing.
I still want to.
No,
I don't give a fuck about the fight on Saturday.
No, you don't want to fight me.
I'm just being real.
The exchange escalated quickly as Rampage's legendary temper began to surface. This is the same man who once powerbombed Ricardo Arona in the middle of a fight and admitted to attending anger management classes that only made him angrier. "I'm being real with you, young buck. You don't want to fight me," Rampage said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of violence. "Sometimes people don't know what they want. You don't want to fight me?" For a moment, it looked like the podcast might turn into an actual brawl between two professional fighters. What happened next revealed everything wrong with Holland's approach to this situation. Instead of showing respect to a legend who had given him a platform, Holland doubled down on his disrespect. The fact that Rampage managed to keep his composure and didn't escalate things physically speaks to his professionalism, but the damage to Holland's reputation was already done. The timing of Holland's disrespectful behavior couldn't have been worse for his career trajectory. At 32 years old, he's already sliding down the rankings with a devastating 1-4 record in his last 5 fights. That UFC 311 fight against Rainier de Ritter that he referenced during the Rampage podcast? He lost by submission in the first round, proving that his focus should have been on training rather than starting beef with legends. Critics were quick to point out that while Holland was busy disrespecting Rampage, he was getting dominated by opponents he should have been beating. The Rampage incident wasn't an isolated case of poor judgment from Holland. At the same UFC 316 media day, where he stormed out over Rampage questions, he managed to start another feud with former welterweight champion Belal Muhammad. When asked about Muhammad's recent title loss to Jack Della Maddalena, Holland couldn't resist taking shots. "So it was pretty cool to see Belal lose the belt," Holland said with obvious satisfaction.
But I thought Belal was going to lose the belt regardless. I've been said a long time ago when Islam was teaching him how to hold the belt that if it wasn't somebody else that take the belt from him, it'd be Islam. So
Muhammad's response was brutal and accurate. "It's always the ones that'll never touch gold that have the most to say. Doesn't this bum lose every other fight he's in?" The former champion had a point. Holland's record of 1-4 in his last 5 fights hardly gave him the standing to criticize someone who had actually won and held a UFC title. But Holland doubled down, questioning on Instagram whether Muhammad was ever a real champion, since he never defended the belt. This pattern of behavior reveals something troubling about Holland's mindset. Instead of focusing on improving his performances and earning respect through his fighting, he seems more interested in creating drama and controversy. While trash talk has always been part of MMA promotion, there's a difference between clever marketing and genuine disrespect toward legends who built the sport. The contrast between Holland and Rampage in how they've handled this situation couldn't be more stark. Despite being provoked and disrespected on his own podcast, Rampage maintained his composure and handled the situation professionally. He later explained that he stayed calm because he didn't want to jeopardize any business opportunities, showing the kind of mature thinking that comes from decades in the fight game. Meanwhile, Holland continues to burn bridges and create enemies within the MMA community. The most damaging aspect of this entire situation for Holland might be how it's affected his relationship with the media and promotional opportunities. His admission that he's stopped doing interviews because of the Rampage situation shows how his poor judgment has limited his ability to promote himself and his fights. In a sport where personality and marketability are almost as important as fighting ability, alienating media members and creating awkward situations isn't exactly a smart career move. The question now is whether Holland can salvage his reputation and career before it's too late. At 32, he's running out of time to turn things around in a sport that's constantly bringing in new talent. His upcoming fight against Vicente Luque at UFC 316 represents a crucial opportunity to let his fighting do the talking instead of his mouth. A win could help people forget about the Rampage drama and focus on his potential as a contender. A loss, however, would further cement the narrative that he's a fighter whose career peaked years ago and who now relies on controversy to stay relevant.